to Europe after a double North American leg, round 8 of the 2018 FF1M Championship, and it comes to you from the Red Bull Ring in Austria. And a quick recap of that North American leg. We have a new championship leader after a disastrous meeting for Ajayrious Autosport and Alessandro Farina. Fernando Alonso now leads the championship by 1 point. Hang on a minute. That's not the Red Bull Ring. Oh, we're at the Österreichring. This is going to be chaos because it's a super fast, super narrow circuit with no runoff in most corners. The only bits of runoff are the Helle Licht chicane and then the two lefts right at the centre of the circuit. The rest, if you go off, your history. Now, FF1M has actually visited this circuit twice before, in 86 and 87, and those races were won by Alain Prost in the Tornado and Ayrton Senna in the Guy racing. Now, I do happen to know the lap record, the known lap record, is a 1 minute 24.6 set by Ayrton Senna in the 1986 season. They were doing mid 1 minute 10s in practice. That lap record is going to be obliterated. And a quick recap of those practice sessions. They were largely unrepresentative as the drivers were finding their way around the circuit, but in qualifying A, it was topped by Ajayrious, Alessandro Farina ahead of James Clark by 1,000th of a second, the enormous gap at 1,000th. And, not for the first time this season, Galaxy failed to qualify. Willows weren't that far off of not qualifying, just nearly 2/10ths, but they're in the race, as are most of the lot in Group B, except for AJ, who languished down at the bottom. I suspect they were trying a race-heavy setup, committing to it from the Friday practice sessions, but it didn't pay off for Kimi Räikkönen and Mattia Alfonsi. So that means we've got Monolith back in a race once again. And then there you can see a shot of the circuit and a historic image. You can see the middle left there, heading into a long right up a big hill into the final Jochen Rindt curve, which is a long right instead of a double right. So, as for qualifying, it's Alessandro Farina on pole position once again. That's his third consecutive pole and his third career pole, except this time he's joined by Andrew Racing's number 2, Daniel Ricciardo. And all Mugen row 2, James Clark ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and then Sebastian Vettel in the other Andrew 5th, ahead of Nolan Bryant, the first of the shake and bakes, in 6th, ahead of Fernando Alonso this time, who qualifies 8th, with Chuck Bucknam sandwiching the shake and bake duo. Row 5 sees Kevin Magnussen ahead of Väinö Kymmenen. Tornadoes tend not to qualify well, instead they focus on the race, and that's evidence because topping the warm-up was Charles Leclerc once again. Thomas Gonzalez is in 11th ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi in the first of the Tilsleys. Tilsley's flying around this circuit, very well suited. Esteban Ocon is 14th behind George Russell 13th. Max Verstappen, the first of the Willows, in 15th ahead of Valtteri Bottas. More on GRM in a moment, but he's 16th. There's Charles Leclerc, who could have had a good race in Canada but got caught up in a three-way accident on lap 2. Nico Hülkenberg 18th. Then the star of Canada, I have to say, Mason Taylor in 19th. Down in 19th, but he was excellent at Montreal, nearly winning the race at one point. Perez 20th, and then the back row filled by 2 Judd runners, Roman Grosjean and Katerina Caracciola. If you're expecting her to be on a race setup, nope, that's just FJR's pace. They're really struggling around this circuit. The car's just not suited to the fast nature of the Österreichring. And to be honest, Magnussen's 9th on the grid was a bit of an overachievement. Briefly on GRM, Bottas and Perez were 7th and 10th in the race, but were disqualified because they had used medium tyres in both Saturday and Sunday's running of Montreal. No such concerns this time, they're committing to the hards. You can use the hards as many times as you like. It's the softer compounds you have to be wary of. So, a venture into the unknown, because the 5 lights are on and the 5 lights go out. That was a very rapid start from Lewis Hamilton from 4th on the grid. He's already ahead of Clark. Is he trying to get ahead of Ricciardo into the first corner? The Helle Licht chicane. Well, we've got Farina in the lead so far. There's some jostling for position further back. Väinö Kimmonen's had a flying start. Väinö Kimmonen, he was somewhere down the order. 10th, he's up to 6th. Great start from the Finn. And further back, Mason Taylor's had a poor one. He's down to last. Although Roman Grosjean is showing as last as well. You can see that's just how fast that particular corner is. Now, this is exiting that long right, the first of the long rights. Now down the back straight, which should be the Gersa curve, but it is in fact a different named. It's the Bosch curve. You can see from the sponsorship there. And rounding that very, very fast right-hand corner. Lewis Hamilton is up for this one. He was very quick in warm-up. He was 6th quickest. So the Mitchells very quick, it seems, of late, because they were very competitive at Montreal as well. And is Hamilton going to go for the lead up that big hill into the Jochen Rindt curve? Let's see, 3:32, slow down to a slightly more sedate 2:73. And he's in the slipstream of Alessandro Farina, but it is Nolan Bryant who is the fastest on the circuit. Now is Hamilton having a look at Farina into Helle-Licht? Not quite, so he's going to have to hold on for a bit longer, and there's some action further back. Esteban Ocon in the top 10, that's a good start from the monolith driver. Caracciolla's made a good start as well, up to 16th from last on the grid. But further back you can see, ooh, that's a bit bumpy through there, but that's the line they take. And Hamilton still in the slipstream. Now, I suspect it's going to be quite difficult to overtake around here because it is very narrow, but Kimmonen's managing that, no problem. He's already got ahead of Fernando Alonso into the Bosch curve. And then I think there's a Texaco curve somewhere on this circuit, but I can't remember where. I'll get a track map loaded up as we watch the rest of the action. Hamilton's still looking for a way past Alessandro Farina. Is he going to do it into the Jochen Rindt curve? Nope, Farina's got that one measured. Alonso having a look at Farina into Jochen Rindt, but not managing that. It is Farina who is... No, it's not. It's actually Väinö Kimmonen who's the fastest on the circuit. As into the Licht. That was Alonso having a look at... And then there's 3 wide nearly into Helle-Licht, but I wouldn't recommend that. So, Fernando Alonso once again having a look at Kimmonen into this corner. I'm nearly remembering the name. Soon. We're expecting 2 or 3 stops, by the way, on this race, and it is going to be a very fast race as well. Look at that top speed of Hamilton, that was approaching 360. But yes, they're doing lap times of about 1 minute 15, and only 51 laps. This race is going to be done in over an hour, just over an hour, and I think it's going to be the fastest FF1M race of all time. So round in the middle of the lefts, actually, exiting the lefts onto the Jochen Rindt. Kimmonen's having a look at Bryant into the final corner, and I think he's going to manage it just about. Bryant trying to hang on side by side, and Kimmonen has managed it. Yeah, fastest laps are 1 minute 11.635. That has decimated Ayrton Senna's effort in 86, but going through Helle-Licht now. Kimmonen having to watch his back because Nolan Bryant hasn't given up yet. We've got a monolith in the top 8 actually. Esteban Ocon is up into 8th place. That'd be nice if he could get points. As that's Bryant having a look back at Kimmonen, and Lewis Hamilton still in the slipstream of Farina. Nearly 350 odd kilometres an hour. Kimmonen hitting 345. And now the middle of the circuit. And once again, it does seem as if the Mitchell doesn't have the straight line speed compared to Gajera. Now, Gajera do have the luxury of as much ERS as they like, and Mugen actually did change the ERS limit for their customer team Mitchell. Now, I don't actually know what that new limit is. They might not tell us, but it seems as if the Mitchell have been more competitive of late. Hamilton thinking about it up the inside at Helle-Licht, but not managing it there. Now, is he going to have a look once again? I know there's a Tyrol curve, but I don't know where that is. Is there a Valvoline curve as well? Again, I'm not 100% sure. But at the top of the circuit, you can see Nolan Bryant still thinking of having a look at Kimminen. It's not the correct line. I think he's going to have to back out of that one. Indeed, he does. As through the Bosch curve, now into the two lefts. I suppose Hellerlich does have a left, but yeah, let's go for that. There's three lefts on this circuit, and that's the third of them gone. Now is Bryant going to have a look into the Jochen Rindt curve, or is Kimminen going to hang on? There are some engine upgrades that have been brought by Climax and Hart. Climax have brought ERS and Control Electronics, new components for this race, and Hart have brought ICE and the other one, Control Electronics. Now that was Hamilton having slipped back a little bit from Farina. Now he's going to come under pressure from Väinö Kimminen. Kimminen desperate for a pick-me-up because he's had a difficult few races. He's up to second, he's done it. And there's a car pulled off and it's a big fire, and it's for Thomas Gonzalez. So the CBAs have gone, well, I'll leave you to figure that one out. It's definitely an engine blow-up. Now, there's Valtteri Bottas on the hard Goodyears, and he's going to be overtaken around the outside by a Willows into Hellerlicht if he's not careful. It's like, oh, the Willows off, and contact, and bash! Bottas out of the race. And that, well, Bottas's atrocious reliability rate continues, as it was Max Verstappen he collided with, and Verstappen getting one on the other GRM. So, let's have a look here, side by side. And Max just didn't want to give that one up. That was Max's error. And Bottas, unfortunately, was the victim. And on board with Max Verstappen, see, he reacted to Bottas being alongside, then he gets onto the curb, loses it, and poor Bottas had nowhere to go but into the rather flimsily designed Armco barrier. And that's Tilsley slowing. Is that Giovinazzi? I think it's Giovinazzi. The blue helmet is Russell's, and you can see the number 88. Well, it should be 99, but anyway. And so then Giovinazzi is out of the race. No, it might be 88. No, it is 99. You can see on the tower graphic on the left. So 3 retirements now. Gonzalez, Bottas and Giovinazzi. And it's a loose wheel for the Tilsley driver. Now, back to the front, because it's Alessandro Farina versus Väinö Kimminen. Kimminen is the fastest on the circuit, a new fastest lap, a 1:11.578. And what can the Tornado driver do about the Gajera driver? Still yellow flags at Hellerlicht, but they're away from it now. As up the hill, Hamilton was under pressure from Nolan Bryant. We switched to that because Bryant up into third place. Bryant looking for his second career podium finish. His first one having come at Macau in the previous season. And it was a deserved one because he had a lot of mechanical trouble. And is Alonso going to follow through? Nope. Shake and Bake's 3 and 5, but I suspect it's going to be 3 and 4 soon because the Shake and Bakes look pretty good in race trim. I suspect they were going for a more of a race setup because they were qualified on the medium Firestones. So the fact that Bryant and Alonso were both in the top 8 meant that they did a very, very good job. Now, that's yellow flags, but ignore those, because you do. It's nearly 3. It's nearly Noah's Ark going upside down. Another new fastest lap for Väinö Kimminen, 1:11.373. We go on board with the Finn, now side by side with Farina into the Hellerlicht. Up the hill, he's going to have to outbrake the Italian, and there you go, Väinö Kimminen takes the lead of the race, and he needs that. And further back you can see Fernando Alonso in the slipstream of Nolan Bryant, and Lewis Hamilton slotting in between the two, but here comes the Shake and Bake, here comes the straight line speed advantage that the Shake and Bake has got, and up into 4th place, there you go, just about. Hamilton was trying not to give that one up, but he's forced to in the end, and bang, that's a Grosjean out of the race. So, we've got 2 Judds out. there's going to have to be some reliability testing from Judd, because they're just not making the finish. Now what have we got? Charles Leclerc, who hasn't made the progress compared to his teammates, race leader, but now up the inside of a monolith. That will be Hulkenberg, because we've still got Esteban Ocon in the top 8. And Chuck Bucknam having a look at George Russell for 10th place as well. Good luck with that. The Tilsley is extremely fast in a straight line. And Leclerc dropped back, actually, from the monolith of Hulkenberg. Now, I have the map in front of me. Right, so we're going into the Bosch curve. That is definitely the Bosch curve, so I got that one correct. Now, this next double left, it's known as the Texaco chicane. Not really a chicane, except for maybe the right afterwards, but it's more of a double left. Kind of what it is now, but a bit faster. And that's Leclerc having a look back at Hulkenberg. I think Clark has just overtaken Lewis Hamilton for 5th place, and Alonso has just taken 3rd place off of Nolan Bryant. So, there's two shake and bakes swapping places as Alonso now tries to catch up to Alessandro Farina. The gap between those two, just 2 seconds, as Leclerc now up the inside of Hulkenberg into Hellerlicht, and through he goes. Now, this straight is called Flatschach, something like that. Flatsch, Flatschach, that's it. Pretty much. Then the Dr. Tyroch curve. That's what we've just gone through. Now the Valvoline Gerade. As we switch to Väinö Kimmonen, who is in the pits this lap. This is probably a 3-stop strategy. Now, just keep an eye out on this pit lane entry, because it sits immediately after this final corner. See, Kimmonen goes into the pits there. And very early pit lane speed limit. And into his box. How quick is this pit stop? There's another set of mechanics out. It's Fernando Alonso into the pits. Not a quick stop from Kimmonen. A pretty good stop from Fernando Alonso, but Kimmonen stays ahead for the moment as Alessandro Farina retakes the lead. Who's going to be second? It's going to be Nolan Bryant, then James Clark, Lewis Hamilton, Vettel, Ocon, and Kimmonen rejoins 12th. That must be ahead of Kevin Magnussen, who's having a look at Kimmonen into Hellerlicht. Kimmonen locking up almost in frustration, but Magnussen gaining a position, catching the fin napping, and now here comes Fernando Alonso, looking to challenge Kimmonen for what could be the net lead, but it depends on if anyone else is 2-stopping, or if these are the only 3 stoppers. Up the hill on the Valvoline straight. Now we've got Ricciardo back up into 7th, Russell up into 8th. Quite a lot of hard tyres being used. There's 8 drivers running hard tyres. And they include Vettel, Ocon, Ricciardo, Russell, Perez, and the two of the 4 retirements, Giovinazzi and Bottas. As Hamilton has a look at Clark going into Hellerlicht. Bryant completes his pit stop. I think that is a 3-stop strategy for the Californian. As he drops down the order. 10th is this 11th. Well, that's Magnussen through. And that was Väinö Kimmonen. So Bryant has jumped ahead of Alonso, who has a look into Hellerlicht. That was nearly contact between the 2 shake and bake drivers. And that was close. Now, that's caught Alonso out there, because he was ahead and challenging Kimmonen, and back up the inside into Dr. Tyroch. Alonso re-establishes his authority over his Californian teammate. Now he's going to set off back after Farina. No, not Farina, Väinö Kimmonen. Farina yet to make a pit stop. Is he 2-stopping, or is he going to stick with a 3-stop? We'll expect the 2-stoppers to start coming in at about lap 15, 16, 17. Well, here comes Lewis Hamilton. I think that's a 3-stop strategy that he's taken. Great stop, 4.7 seconds. And he's going to rejoin. That's P8 so far. P9. Magnussen, here's Kimmonen. That's the 2 shake and bakes, so that's gone through. And ahead of Caracciola. And is Caracciola having a look out of pride, basically? FJRs look to be two-stopping for this race, so Magnussen up in 9th doesn't seem too bad. He's lapping quicker than Chuck Bucknam at the moment. Now we're having a look at Farina, who is ahead of a lapped Verstappen. So, rounding the Rindt curve, into the pits comes Alessandro Farina. Verstappen regains that lap back. And how quick will this pit stop be? Keep an eye on the fuel gauge, how much fuel goes on. Not a lot at all. That is a 3-stop strategy that Farina has taken. And a slow pit stop as Sebastian Vettel comes into the pits, but he had nothing to do with the slow pit stop of Farina. It just took a while, that's all. We have James Clark in the lead. Esteban Ocon in a monolith up into 2nd place. I like the sound of that. And Farina rejoining ahead of Kevin Magnussen, that is, and ahead of Väinö Kymmenen. So Farina has retaken the net lead, and he's on a light fuel load compared to the Tornado, but he's got Kevin Magnussen to see to first. I can't expect that to be too difficult because Magnussen has yet to stop, and the FJR is about as efficient in a straight line as a chocolate ashtray. And in fact, Magnussen is going to pit at the end of this lap. Well, he's going to have a go at Farina, why not? Inside, then outside, probably back to the inside. Just bothering Farina before he comes into the pits. Is Magnussen going to 2-stop or 3-stop? That is going to be a question. He's pretty quick through the 1st and 2nd sectors, nearly 3.5 tenths up on his personal best. He's going to have a sniff at Farina, but nothing coming about that. Now he's going to jink right into the pits. And let's see what it's like in traffic. It's not too bad, actually, so a fairly reasonable pit-in. As Farina, Kymmenen, and in the background should be Fernando Alonso, but he slipped back a little bit. There he goes through Hellerlicht. And who's ahead? That's Chuck Bucknam ahead of Alessandro Farina. And Farina's teammate coming into the pits at the end of this lap. The race is going by very quickly. I told you it'd be a fast one. And Farina, is he going to have a look at Bucknam? We've got yellow flags. Is that at Hellerlicht? I think it is. Who's pulled off? As round the outside of Bucknam goes Farina through the Bosch curve. As Russell exits the pits into the path of Charles Leclerc. Is there going to be contact between these two? Well, Russell's going to tank slapper and have a spin at Hellerlicht. He should be able to rejoin from there, but he's going to have to wait. That was the replay of Russell's spin. As into the pits comes Clark. He's 2-stopping. That is a 2-stop strategy for the Cheshire driver. No, Greater Manchester, actually. I think Altringham's in Greater Manchester. Long pit stop, though, 7.8 seconds. And where's he going to rejoin in relation to the pack as Chuck Bucknam comes into the pits? P5, P6. That should be ahead of Esteban Ocon, who has also stopped on the same lap. So very briefly, Daniel Ricciardo leads the race on a 2-stop strategy, I expect. And we're having a look at a bit of a kerfuffle behind Nico Hülkenberg, but we're focusing on the German, who is rounding the Dr. Tyrrell curve. Smash out of the race. That was pure understeer. So the first monolith out of the race. And park the car just on the Valvoline straight. Luckily, him and the wheel are well out of contention. Is an FJR going to make an overtake? I doubt it. But he's going to try. Kevin Magnussen versus Chuck Bucknam going into Bosch curve. And this is a battle for 11th place. And Magnussen is on a 2-stop strategy. So even if his car's slow in a straight line, he has picked a strategy which could give him track position over some of his rivals. And meanwhile up the front, Farina holds a 1.8 second lead over Väinö Kymmenen. And the two shake and bake separated by 7 tenths. So they're keeping each other close company. Into the Rindt curve goes Magnussen on Bucknam. Not making that overtake stick. And just behind that's Mason Taylor. Now is he going to pounce on Kevin Magnussen's slow exit? We know how quick the CBA is in a straight line, but Magnussen is in the slipstream of Bucknam. Magnussen having a look at Bucknam into Hellerlicht. and not making that unstick and nearly being passed around the outside by Taylor. And onto the Flatschach straight. And there should be a long right, which indeed there is, which Bucknam and Magnussen are at the moment. I think both are on a two-stop strategy, so I think for Magnussen's race he needs to get ahead of the Detroit man, Chuck Bucknam, FF1M champion from last season. As we switch to Charles Leclerc now chasing Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton struggling a little bit more in the race than I was expecting, so maybe he was on a bit of more of a qualifying setup, but he was fairly decent in warm-up, so I think he's just got a bit of a bad run of the traffic. But Leclerc has the speed at the moment. Farina has the speed at the moment. He's now 2.3 seconds ahead of Kinnunen, but Farina is on a lighter fuel load. Well, he took on a lighter fuel load at his first pit stop, so maybe he's pitting first. Yellows at Hella Licht. It's Caracciola, another technical failure, mechanical problems. She has had an appalling season with mechanicals. Every single race this season, something has gone wrong with her car. I mean, in Australia, it was an earlier than expected first pit stop. Unseen. Technical problem. Same again at Kyalami. Then mechanical failures for 4 races in a row. Mugello, Aragon, Monaco and Road America. She at least finished in Canada, but she had 4 pit stops, which meant that she had another technical issue. And now 8 races in, 8 mechanicals in a row. So how many Judds is that out? That's 3 Judds out. Verstappen, Magnussen and Taylor remaining out of those 3. And Taylor, the highest of those 3, now up to 11th. He's just overtaken Chuck Bucknam. And look at this 3-way battle. It's going to be 3 wide into the Bosch curve. Don't recommend that. Nearly contact between Hamilton and Leclerc. But it's Esteban Ocon who holds on to 7th place at the moment. As now Leclerc tries to do something about the monolith driver. Nearly at half distance now. Lap 23. It's now 2.7 seconds, the gap between Farina and Kinnunen. Up the inside into the Rindt curve, and Leclerc takes 7th off of Esteban Ocon. Now is Hamilton going to do the same? I think straight line speeds aren't that different, although Hamilton just dropping back in the out of the slipstream, so that's yellows for the recovering Caracciola. As through Hella Licht. Now onto Flatschach. A translation of that into English, please. And who's that behind? That would be Daniel Ricciardo in 10th place. And he's lapping quicker than both Ocon and Hamilton, and Taylor lapping quicker than those 3. So Taylor making some advances. As into the Bosch curve, Ocon defending the final points off of Lewis Hamilton. And the top 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can see on their lap charts. So they're spreading themselves out a little bit. Now, who's the highest of the 2 stoppers? I think it is it James Clark? I think it is. So he's 13.9 seconds behind Farina, as having a look up the inside into Rindt, and nearly shaving the rear wing of Esteban Ocon is Lewis Hamilton. Can he do it down this main straight? Just when he pulls out of the slipstream, the monolith seems to edge ahead a bit. So it could be that the Mitchell is quite a draggy car, like the FJR, but their engine, the Mugen engine, is probably just a bit better than the Judd engine. Into Dr. Tyroch, where Nico Hülkenberg crashed out earlier. No such problems for those 2. In fact, it was Charles Leclerc who was the fastest on the circuit the last time around. Keep an eye on the gap between Farina and Leclerc. It's 24 seconds at the moment. We'll see what it is at the start of lap 25. If it goes down, then Leclerc obviously has the quicker car at this stage. It is now the start of lap 25, but it's Farina making a pit stop. So this is his second pit stop. And not enough fuel to the end of the race, which means that he is definitely 3 stopping. So he's already dropped down to 5th. Is Vettel taking him? Yes. Is Leclerc going to take him as well? He hasn't crossed the start-finish line just yet. He has now. Is Leclerc going to take Farina? Yes, he is. So Farina losing track position over the top 6. But if most of those are 3 stopping, he probably will gain those positions back. Here comes the next of the 3 stoppers. It is a shake and bake, and it is Fernando Alonso. So Kimmelin leads at the moment. Nolan Bryant briefly up to 2nd. It'll be James Clark up to 3rd. There's more mechanics out. Now, which mechanics are those? Are those tornado mechanics? Is that for Charles Leclerc, I wonder? It is indeed. Charles Leclerc is on a 3-stop strategy, so Farina needn't worry too much about him. As out of the pits comes Fernando Alonso. That is behind Lewis Hamilton. So that's 8th place for the Spaniard at the moment, but ahead of the 2-stopping Daniel Ricciardo, so that's a crucial one in terms of track position. Another good stop for Nolan Bryant, 5.2 seconds, as he exits the pits. Where's he going to rejoin? Because he was pretty close to Fernando Alonso. Alonso has crossed the start-finish line, and he maintains track position ahead of Bryant, who is ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. That will do his and Shake and Bake's race good. But definite 3-stop strategies for those 2 drivers. As by the looks of it is Lewis Hamilton, who still hasn't got past Esteban Ocon. That's been a frustrating stint for Lewis Hamilton. He'll be ruining his lack of straight line speed. So the other Tornado also on a 3-stop strategy, coming through the Rindt curve. And that's going to put the 2-stopping James Clark into the lead of the race. So Väinö Kimmonen hits 80 kilometres an hour and slows down as he sights his mechanics, which sort of match. On goes the fuel, just 15 laps in total. That should take him to about, if it's not lap 43, it'll be a bit earlier than that, so probably lap 40. We'll be expecting Kimmonen to come into the pits. That was Vettel coming into the pits as well. So now, oh, that was tight, but Farina just maintains track position over Kimmonen. But it is now the 2-stopping James Clark in the lead of the race. And I think Esteban Ocon is on a 2-stop strategy as well, because he is up to 4th place, actually. So Esteban Ocon having a tremendous race for Monolith. As through the final corner, that's James Clark we're looking at. Yet to win a race in his career. He's had a couple of podiums. He had a 2nd at Aragon and then another 2nd at Monaco. Then his car broke down for 2 races in a row at Road America and Montreal. Could have had good results there, but anyway, that's why Fernando Alonso, the driver we're on board with, is leading the Drivers' Championship, because his shake and bake has been very reliable. Finished all but 1 races, and that was actually, ironically, his home race. Up the inside of Ocon into Tyrrell. That's a brave one, but Ocon just about hanging on. Alonso needs to get past the Monolith if he's going to make his strategy work, and if he's going to keep in touch with Farina and Kimmonen. But Ocon doing pretty well, and that heart showing that it's got some pretty good grunt. That's through the Bosch curve now into Texaco, the double left. You can see some pretty dried up wheat field on the right there. You can see the crowd on the right. But we're going left with Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. Now this is an opportunity going up the big hill into the Rindt curve. Is he going to manage it this time? No, but Ocon gave him room. Now, how good is the slipstream down the straight? How good is that Megatron engine? How good is the shake and bake straight line speed? Here it comes, but Ocon, he wants that 4th place. He wants to hold on to it. Nearly contact between the 2, but just about getting away with it. And this is costing Shake and Bake their race against Farina and Kimmonen, because Alonso is now 7 seconds behind the Italian into Tyrrell. Ocon once again hanging on. Could be on for a good load of points in the Monolith. We'll see how this battle pans out. Just 6 retirements so far. I was expecting a bit more than that, actually. But those 6 retirements being Thomas Gonzalez, Valtteri Bottas, Antonio Giovinazzi, Roman Grosjean, Nico Hülkenberg and Caterina Caracciola. Perez is 16th, having lost a position to Max Verstappen. So Verstappen had that incident earlier on with Valtteri Bottas, and I think was supposed to be doing a 2-stop strategy, and I think he must have brought that forward. So I think Verstappen has got one more pit stop to make, so that's why he's ahead of Perez. And that 3-stop strategy for Hamilton really cost him dearly. He's down in 14th place. Here comes another look into Helle Licht for Alonso versus Ocon. Can he manage it this time? Is Ocon hanging on? He's still hanging on, is Ocon. Now the two shake and bakes about to go into combat with each other. Bryant's having a look at his vastly experienced teammate, 300 races plus, into Dr. Tyrrell. And Alonso keeps track position for the moment as he looks to re-engage his chase after Esteban Ocon. Very experienced FF1M driver was Ocon, but now he's in the big league and he's showcasing just exactly what he can do. Max Verstappen makes his second and what should be final pit stop. That was a bit wide from Esteban Ocon. That's going to give Alonso an opportunity into Texaco, but not close enough to have a look. There's no real braking zones on this circuit except for Helle Licht. And if you're alongside far enough, you can overtake into the Rindt curve. Can Alonso demonstrate that, or is that monolith actually pretty good in a straight line? It's good enough for Esteban Ocon to hang on. Meanwhile, up the front, Clark holds a 9.2 second lead over his teammate Farina, but Farina has only got 9/10 over Kinnunen. Kinnunen seems the quicker driver at this stage. Now into Helle Licht. Can Alonso? No, he can't do it. That monolith hanging on nicely. And behind, that's Daniel Ricciardo in 7th place. The last of the 2 stoppers to make a pit stop. That is a fast corner. You can see the mountains in the distance as well. And sets of red and white Armco on either side. Big crowd as well. You can see them exposed and then in the grandstand. But absolutely no runoff. And off goes Verstappen. Is he going to make the barrier? He's going to make the grass verge, but he should be able to rejoin from there. That was a spin at the Tyrrell curve as another Judd runner makes an appearance on the timing graphic, and it's in the form of Mason Taylor making a pit stop. That's Nolan Bryant having a look at his teammate down Valvoline, and the fact that they're both still stuck behind Esteban Ocon now results in 11 seconds, the gap between Alonso and Farina. I think they're just going to have to settle for a podium battle here, but decent haul of points for Shake and Bake. Not quite as decent as the Gajera, mind you, 1 and 2 at the moment. Now, is this a good run for Alonso this time? Into the Rindt curve? No, I don't think so, but Ocon once again leaving room around the outside. And that's Verstappen, who is lapped once again. Now this is a better chance for Alonso. Is Ocon going to move over? Is Bryant's going to look at around the outside of his teammate? No, the holding station so far. Daniel Ricciardo making a pit stop. As we switch to Väinö Kinnunen, who is just half a second behind Farina as they started this lap. Now Farina doesn't want this because he wants another victory. He doesn't want Kinnunen all over his gearbox because once he starts defending, Clark will start eking out that gap. Actually, Kinnunen lost about 4/10 of a second in that first sector because he's now... It was 9/10 as they crossed the second sector point. Now into the Rindt curve. Let's have a look at these speeds through here. Under 300 Ks. Come on, Kinnunen. You can do better than that. And the gap is 8/10 between Farina and Kinnunen as they cross the line into Helle Licht. How slow is this corner? 1:59 according to the Tornado. Now on the Flatschach straight. And there's some tents in the distance as well. Really, I've thought about the scenery when making this circuit. No Austrians in the field, but they do like the motor racing. Interestingly, Farina was the fastest on the circuit last time out, quicker even than teammate James Clark, but the fastest on that lap was Charles Leclerc. He's quicker than all of the top 7 in front of him. As through Texaco goes Farina and Kinnunen. They're running the fuel down a bit. I expect another 3 or 4 laps before either of these two make a pit stop. Speaking of pit stops, into the pits comes race leader James Clark. He needs a good pit stop and a good set of outlaps if he's going to retake track position over his teammate and Kinnunen. Good pit stop, 5 seconds exactly. And where's he going to rejoin? It should be P3, because he was sufficiently enough ahead of Esteban Ocon at the time. Who comes into the pits actually, and just about maintaining P3. He's going to bolt the shake and bakes into Hellelicht. Just about hangs on. That is actually crucial for Clark's race. Now he needs to bolt on his new set of tyres. Otherwise, Fernando Alonso is going to be at him into the tyre curve. Can he do it under the brakes, or what you use of the brakes? Clark nearly running off the circuit entirely. Now, has that compromised his exit? Because it's going to give Alonso an opportunity. It's going to give Bryant an opportunity of his own. And Alonso slipped back behind Bryant. That has cost Alonso dearly. Now Bryant chasing after James Clark's 3rd place. So a good bit of awareness from Bryant as he moves ahead of his own teammate. Through Texaco. And how about the rest of them? So Farina is once again less than half a second now ahead of Väinö Kinnunen, should I say, as up the inside into Jochen Rindt curve. Is Bryant going to do it this time? He is! Nolan Bryant up into 3rd place, and that's going to help Farina and Kinnunen, but here comes the wily fox, Fernando Alonso. He's going to take the pair of them, is he? It's 3 wide into Hellelicht. This cannot end well. And it doesn't. There was contact between Clark and Alonso, and that's damaged somebody's car. I think it's damaged Alonso's car. As Clark spins round, he's okay in terms of... He's out! Fernando Alonso's actually out of the race. Lost a wheel, so the wily fox has become he's limped to an end. I couldn't think of a pun for that one, so up the inside, that was just 3 into 1 not working, and the wheel just came off on the grass. And what's that done for the order? It's Leclerc who's now moved up into 4th place. He's rocketing up the order in this stint. He's got ahead of Vettel, but actually dropping behind Vettel. Can I just take a quick look at Leclerc just to make sure he's undamaged? Because he was ahead of Vettel at that time. Now he's behind once again. This is a battle for the lead between Farina and Kinnunen into the Jochen Rindt curve, and Farina lost the lead to Väinö Kinnunen, but they're going to battle once again. And a fastest lap in the process as well for Kinnunen, 1 minute 11.364. Farina having a look back up the inside into Hellelicht, but Farina hanging on. And I think Leclerc did take damage from that incident between Alonso and Clark, because he's now dropped behind Clark, and you can see the red pit indicator on Kinnunen's head-up display, which means that your teammate is coming into the pits. So bad luck there for Charles Leclerc, that's basically an entire lap with damaged car. So that's going to drop him quite a bit down the order. And he'll have made his final pit stop a little bit earlier than he'd hoped. So Clark now moves back up into 5th place. Hamilton up into 6th, but he's got another pit stop to make. Ocon 7th, Ricciardo 8th, having made his final pit stop. And is Magnussen going to take Leclerc for 9th place? I don't think so, looking at the timing tower on the left. And there's some traffic approaching. That's Kinnunen approaching Sergio Perez in 14th place. Not last, that distinct unhonour goes to Max Verstappen for now. At least Verstappen is still in the race. 3 Judds still in the race, actually, so that's some relatively decent development. And look at that, Kinnunen and Farina both pitting on the same lap. It's going to be down to the pit crews. and whoever has the earlier garage has the advantage. And Kinnunen approaching Perez to lap and further back. Let's have a look at the rest of the order, trying to identify some other runners. Chuck Bucknam not having a great race, his teammate coming into the pits from 6th. Now he's already dropped behind Ocon and Ricciardo, should drop behind Leclerc, possibly even behind Kevin Magnussen as well. Hasn't dropped behind Leclerc just yet, as Kinnunen laps Perez through Jochen Rindt, and there's Leclerc back up into 8th place. As into the pits comes Kinnunen and Farina at the same time. So the gap between the two, 1.2 seconds, and Farina has the earlier pit garage. So, how quick are these pit stops? Kinnunen gets away first, 5.2 seconds, and Farina 5.5 seconds. And I think the shake and bake mechanics were out for Nolan Bryant as well. Expect the American, there he goes, into the pits. So maintaining the lead is Väinö Kinnunen, and that will do his championship a lot of good. Sebastian Vettel briefly taking second, but he has one more pit stop to make. So for the moment he splits Kinnunen and Farina, but status quo will be resumed. I think Vettel could jump James Clark here for what will be a net 3rd place. So that's been a low-key rise, fairly low-key race actually for Vettel, but staying out of the trouble could potentially get him. Actually, no, I think the gaps are a little bit inaccurate because Kinnunen and Farina have made pit stops, so it's not a true 26 seconds between Kinnunen and Clark, so false alarm, Vettel is not on for a podium just yet. Into the pits comes the 2-time champion, won his championships with Dark Wolf in 2007, then his second championship with Shake and Bake in 2014. These days he's an Andrew driver, and got his season underway, effectively, in the last race at Canada, with a podium in 2nd place. Never mind 3rd, he's down to 6th, behind Bryant. Oh, and his own teammate could get him for 7th. Oh no, the two Andrews have collided! That's not what you want! It's cost them both. Mostly Ricciardo. And he's going to block the path for Charles Leclerc, who's got Kevin Magnussen all over his gearbox. Magnussen lapping pretty quickly in this final stint of the race. So Leclerc up to 7th. Ricciardo through Tyrrell slots into 8th place between Leclerc and Magnussen. And Leclerc was the fastest on the circuit last time out, but Ricciardo having a look back, and Magnussen having a look as well. That's nearly contact on the straight between Magnussen and Ricciardo, but somehow they get away without flying into the scenery. But it is Leclerc who takes 7th place for the moment. Ricciardo is still in the slipstream, but he's now under pressure from Kevin Magnussen. But I'm expecting Ricciardo to hold on to that 8th place because the FJR has not been competitive at all through Austria. Through the Jochen Rindt curve, Magnussen's trying it, but he's having to back out there. But Magnussen's up for it, he can sniff a point. And closing in on the slipstream, is he going to have a look into Hellelicht? Ricciardo defending that one, holding the middle ground. Some understeer from Magnussen through there, but he's seems the quicker driver at the moment. I mean, it makes sense. Ricciardo was 16th in the warm-up. Magnussen was 13th. It could be an ERS thing. Could be that Magnussen is running higher ERS than the Andrew, which are limited by the amount set by Climax. Into Jochen Rindt and zoom up the inside. Magnussen is in the points as Ricciardo walls it round the outside. Now he's got Mason Taylor for company, and Mason Taylor slingshots out of the slipstream, and he's going to take 9th off of Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo nearly ending his race at Jochen Rindt, somehow hanging on. Now through Dr. Tyrrell curve. Is he hanging on? No, he's not. Slides off the circuit, spins in exactly the same way as Max Verstappen did earlier on, and skids to a halt. And speaking of Verstappen, there he is out of the race. Suspension problems for the Willows. So, As in the previous race, both Willows out of the race. There's going to be a memo sent to Judd after this race. Sort your reliability out, you utter pair of wazzocks. They've got an incoming battle for 6th place between Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc. Vettel's car probably not in the best condition after that contact with his teammates. Through the Bosch curve, and Leclerc looking for a 6th place off of Sebastian Vettel. After the heights of Road America, he'll have been wanting a little bit more. Very unlucky though to be caught up in that incident between Alonso and Clark at Hellerlicht. And his fastest lap, a 1:11.599, a quarter of a second off of Kinnunen, who currently holds the fastest lap. You can just about see it just above the timing tower, Leclerc versus Kinnunen in terms of lap time. Into Hellerlicht, Vettel defending a little bit from Leclerc. I suspect that Leclerc will have an advantage because Tornado can run as much as they like. Andrew limited by the amount set, and there's the proof. Leclerc up the inside into Tyrrell and taking that 6th place. Now his next target might just be a little bit far away. Esteban Ocon having a superb race up in 5th place. And that'll do Monolith season a nice bit of good. Using that 2-stop strategy to help, but from 14th on the grid, definitely a candidate for drive of the day. Other candidates include Väinö Kinnunen, back after a difficult run of races. Great start from Väinö Kinnunen actually, from 10th up to 6th before Hellerlicht. And then just worked his way back up the front. The other Tornado coming under a bit of pressure into Jochen Rindt, but Leclerc should take the inside line, indeed he does. And holding on to that 6th place for the moment, but still in the slipstream is Sebastian Vettel. You got the youth of Leclerc versus the experience of Vettel. Now the inside into Hellerlicht. Nope, Vettel having to back out of that one. The slipstream is very effective around this circuit because you'd expect Leclerc to pull away, but Vettel using that slipstream well to hang on to the 6 of Leclerc. That's through the first sector point in the middle of Dr. Tyrrell curve. Some trees to their right. Suddenly becomes Armco and grass and the dried up wheat field. We're now on the penultimate lap. It's 2.6 seconds, the gap between Kinnunen and Farina, and it is 2 Gajeras on the podium, with Clark in 3rd. Nolan Bryant, a solid race from the shake and bake driver. 4th, probably hindered a little bit by his 3-stop strategy and in particular struggling to overtake Esteban Ocon, who has had a superb race. Now we're on to the final lap. Väinö Kinnunen on his serene way, the fastest on the circuit. Still lapping very quickly, a 1:11.609, as he comes up to lap Daniel Ricciardo. That's 13th place Ricciardo. And the gap between Kinnunen and Farina, 2.7 seconds. And Clark almost exactly 8 seconds behind his own teammate, as Kinnunen puts that lap on Ricciardo, who blends off the throttle and gives Kinnunen a bit of space. Just a few more corners to go, which at this point is still half a lap. That's just the way the circuit is. I've enjoyed it round Österreichring. It's a different challenge compared to the Red Bull Ring. More of a slipstream fest, and a different sort of race. It was very close at the beginning. But then once the field have sorted themselves out, yeah, I approve. I would quite like an alternation between Österreichring and Red Bull Ring, but, well, that's in charge of the AFIA. And, well, I promise you he crossed the line for his 9th career win, Väinö Kinnunen. And back in championship contention, kickstarting his championship defence. But it's the 2 Gajeras, 2nd and 3rd, and that will certainly help Farina. He retakes the championship lead, actually, from Fernando Alonso. We'll get that confirmed in due course. But there's confirmation of the order, and it's Nolan Bryant 4th. Ocon, superb race in 5th place for the Monolith, and a good haul of points. That will move them ahead of GRM. Charles Leclerc 6th ahead of Sebastian Vettel, and Kevin Magnussen That's a save for himself and FJR because they just weren't competitive at all. Magnussen had some setup to help him out though, so that probably explains his point. And then as for the rest of them, only 2 lapped runners, Ricciardo and Perez, and the list of retirements, a mixture of mechanical and collisions and accidents, and they include Max Verstappen, Alonso, Caracciola, Hülkenberg, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Bottas and Gonzalez, who was the first retirement. So no points for CBA, and that will move FJR level with them, I believe. And no points for Mitchell either, so 3 teams should be on 18 points. So Farina retakes the championship lead from Alonso, 7 points is the gap between those two. Väinö Kymmänen shoots up to 3rd ahead of James Clark, 38 and 35 points. Leclerc remains in 5th, and it's Nolan Bryant who moves ahead of Kevin Magnussen for 6th in the Drivers' Championship. And Vettel continuing his renaissance, now ahead of Thomas Gonzalez, 9th place. Kimi Räikkönen in the AJ weren't even racing today. So the team's championship, it's 25 points, the gap between Gajera and Schakenbeek, and Schakenbeek just 1 point ahead of Tornado. And that is confirmation that 3 teams share 18 points each, Mitchell ahead of FJR and CBA on countback. Andrew move up to 7th ahead of AJ, I think remain in 7th ahead of AJ. And Willow's 9th Monolith move ahead of Tilsley and GRM to 10th in the championship, and as before, Galaxy yet to score. So that was the Austrian Grand Prix at the Österreichring. We then move over to the British Grand Prix, the home race for many drivers and many teams here, at the Silverstone circuit. So we shall see you for then.